Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons & Dragons, and I'm going to ask the question, what is Grundrar the Fighter? And specifically today, I'm going to answer the question, when you as a Dungeons & Dragons player create a player character, what obligations do you now have as a creator of a player character, right? I think that binds you to specific obligations, and I want to discuss this. So, first of all, where is this coming from? This is coming from Matt Reeves' stunning Planet of the Apes trilogy. And in the first one, Caesar sees a dog on a leash and realizes he's on a leash and says, "What is it?" And says to James Franco, "Am I a pet?" Right? And James Franco says, "No, you're not a pet." And then he says, "What is Caesar?" Right? And that question is now coming to us. I think the question, what is Grundrar the Fighter? Grundrar the Fighter is now asking that as a player character. Why are our player characters asking these questions? Because we've reached this point where Gary's legacy is in full bloom, right? And we have people who are engaging with player characters at levels of engagement that we have never seen before, and additionally, not only engaging with player characters at these incredibly high rates, right? But also, not just engaging, but investing time and emotion and focus and our memory and sensation into these player characters. Things are changing, right? And I think player characters are now saying, what is Grundrar the Fighter? Like the player character Grundrar the Fighter is saying, what am I? What was I made for, right? And we, as Dungeons and Dragons players, the moment we create a Dungeons and Dragons player character, we as players immediately gain obligation. Now, first of all, when is a player character made? I've done an entire video on that, on what constitutes the creation of a player character. So under the parameters that I described on what it takes to create a Dungeons and Dragons character, the moment you do, what are the obligations that you as a player now have? Okay, so first, you are obligated to give that player character life, right? If you create a player character, you're obligated to give it life. Now, what does that mean? It means that Gary Gygax created a game where he did not want tokens anymore. He didn't want soldier tokens, right? Like, he's like, your job is not to create this character and kill it, right? Your job is to create this character, know what kind of soup they like to eat, know, if there's somebody who's waiting for them to return to their village, to know, if they like to sing in the rain, like every aspect of humanity is to be explored in these player characters. These are not throwaway. You are creating life, right? And so one, we need to invest the moment we decide species, class, name, we are bound to give that life, and that means this player character cannot be a caricature. They cannot be a pile of tropes, and they certainly cannot be simply a pile of feats and numbers and powers, right? That's not enough, right? There needs to be a backstory. There needs to be bond, flaws, right? These are critically important. So we owe pouring life into these identity vessels, okay? In addition to that, we owe them adventure, right? Adventure, okay? Social interaction, combat, and exploration. We must achieve all of those with a player character. That is our obligation. And so when we create a player character, we are obligated to bring it to a table, to allow these powerful questions about the fullness of that identity to be manifested. And then for that identity to take risks, to overcome evil, and specifically to fulfill quests. It's extremely important. It's critical that this happens, and that this is fully manifested. So I believe the moment we create a player character, it means that we owe it life and we owe it adventure. Now, the second we realize that and we accept that and we acknowledge that, it changes things. So one, I think that demands that no more than one player character per month be created. And the reason why is if you are creating player characters at a rate faster than that, there's no real expectation you will bring even half of them to life and adventure. And so what does that mean if we're not able to fulfill our obligation to these identity vessels that we have created, right? If we're just if we're sitting down and filling, and in a month we create 10 player characters because we enjoy doing it, right? Our intention may be to bring those characters to life and to adventure through D&D campaign play. But if we're doing that, like even 6 months a year, right, and we're creating 60 player characters a year, we're not being realistic. And now there's this incredibly strange thing. So like one of the things that's been happening, in our modern times is people will put a bunch of eggs and freeze them, right? But they might put away far more than they can bring to life. And that brings up a question of, oh my gosh, wait a second, is this cruel? Is this inhumane, right? And it's the same thing here. If you're creating player characters at a rate where you cannot logically, realistically bring them to life, have even the possibility of bringing them all to life and all to adventure, then you have done something wrong. And you have failed to meet your obligations to those player characters, right? And see, the moment we begin to explore this question, what is Grundrar the fighter, right? It demands change in our behavior, right? So one, when you sit down to run a player character and you have 30 in the drawer already, stop sitting down. Don't pull that character sheet out, right? It's not okay to just make character sheet after character sheet after character sheet if you're not going through the actions to bring them to life, to bring them to adventure in a D&D campaign. That is cruel. That is unwise. That is, in my opinion, morally wrong, right? So one, you should never have a backlog of 20 or more player characters. It is simply cruel, right? Now, yeah, it is cruel, and it is you as a creator not accepting the obligation that sitting down at a table with a with a blank D&D character sheet, right? That is a moment of impact. That is a moment of importance, and you should not go down that road lightly, right? Because the moment you create that character, you owe it life, you owe it adventure. Those are your obligations. And if you have failed to meet those obligations, or on 20 character sheets you've already created, do not ever make another. Do not ever make another. And that doesn't mean you're not engaging with Dungeons & Dragons. It means you need to go out there and find a dungeon master, right, to run those player characters. And you don't make another until you are actively bringing your characters through to life and to adventure, because that is your obligation as a creator. Every single word of that is my humble opinion. What's important is when I get to hear your humble opinion, when you get in the comments and send your traffic. Please consider liking, subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.